Welcome back, my dear listeners. Before we begin today's story, please show some love by subscribing to the channel and liking the video. Now then, let us begin. He sat on the couch and thought about Jonathan's comments about taking it easy to keep his heart pumping. One of his joys in life was having a good cigar on the back patio. Molly hates even a whiff of smoke coming into the house as he goes in and out for additional alcohol. He thought she's doing what she wants. I'll do what I want. With that in mind, he dusted off the humidor that hadn't been opened in 5 months. His choice was a Liga Privada No. 9, at 7 inches long. It should last an hour. As he sat on the couch, he lit up a cigar that was at the top of Molly's thou shalt not list. Yeah, smoking is bad for your health, so is having your wife duck somebody else? A one-finger pour of his favorite single malt scotch wouldn't hurt anything either. He turned on the Fox Sports Center and stepped away from the sheet storm around him. It was a relaxing 65 minutes as his cigar stub was smoldering in the ashtray as Molly came in the door. "What the hell?" was her first reaction to the earthy smell of one of mankind's best smokes. "Brad, you shouldn't be smoking." "Yeah, and you shouldn't be ducking some asshole. This is going to ruin the drapes and the carpeting. You can't get the smoke smell out. This will never be the same. It has to be torn out and thrown away." Callously he said, "You know, Molly, there is some real symbolism here. Smoke ruined the carpet, so we throw it away. You ruined our marriage, so maybe we should throw it away too?" Knowing she would be rejected, she couldn't run and hug her husband. His point was valid and she had no one to blame but herself. She was at a loss for words to combat his attack. Instead, she walked to the couch and sat down, not next to him but on the same couch. That's as close as he would let her be to him. Trying to change the battlefield, she asked, "We have been invited over to the Simpsons tonight for wine and dessert. Sharon has finished refinishing her kitchen and wants us to see it. I know it's not something you like to do, but can we leave the house for an hour or so and get away from the terrible hurt I put on you? Please?" "Okay, an hour is about all I can take from her husband. It'll be good to be out of this house for a little while though. I don't care much for Gary either, but the Kellys and the Sullivans will be there so you aren't alone with Gary." Their dinner was quiet until Brad asked about her visit to the health clinic. Molly said it was humiliating. "I knew all 3 of the nurses. They were professional about it and didn't judge me, at least to my face. The worst part was having to disclose who I have had sex with in the last 90 days. My hand was shaking badly as I put Eric's name down and not yours. I am so ashamed, Brad. I can understand a small, very small piece of what you are going through." She had a hard time getting the last statement out of her mouth. Brad didn't say a thing. He didn't have to. Molly was happy to enter Gary and Sharon's house. Brad displayed a small faked smile and went over to the kitchen to make admiring comments about it. Gary took Brad to the family room where Paul and Sam were talking about the next Buccaneers football game. The 3 men had already gotten into Gary's scotch selection and were laughing and joking. Gary offered Brad a drink and Brad answered, "Sorry, I have to stay away from that for a few more months." "Thanks for the offer." "I forgot about that, Brad. How's the rehab coming?" "Rehab takes time and effort, and prevents me from doing as much as I want to do." As Gary smirked toward the other 2 guys, he said, "Too bad there's things you want to do but can't. Speaking of that, I hear that you're letting that smoking hot wife of yours duck other guys because of your weak heart. I'd like to put my name on the list of guys she is allowed to duck. I'd really like to do her." Upon saying that, Brad's face turned to stone and his eyes shot fire at this insensitive jerk. How dare he talk to him like that? Gary noticed the mood change and quickly smiled and said, "Just kidding, pulling your chain. I didn't mean any disrespect to you or Molly." He offered his hand and said, "No hard feelings." Brad's face softened but his heart and anger didn't. He took a step toward Gary, putting out his right hand. Gary smirked at Brad but didn't see the hard swing of Brad's left hand, headed directly at Gary's nuts. His flashing fist made a direct hit. As Gary screamed in excruciating pain, Brad took the opportunity to introduce his elbow to Gary's jaw. Brad wanted Gary to feel the pain every time he thinks of Brad Carson or his wife. Gary spun a full 360 degrees and fell on the coffee table, sending glass, drinks and hors d'oeuvres everywhere. The three women rushed into the room as Sharon exclaimed, "What happened?" Brad looked directly at Molly and sneered, "Gary heard you were ducking other men because I couldn't perform for you. He asked to be put on the list of guys that can duck you. I gave him my answer." Molly's face was drained of blood. "Oh no," it was all she could say, but she kept saying it over and over. She turned to Sharon and shouted, "You weren't supposed to tell anyone." "No one. You shouldn't have told anyone." Molly turned toward Brad, but he was gone. She didn't even hear the door slam for the noise from Gary's groaning. Brad's tail lights were all Molly could see as she rushed outside to talk to him. "Go sheet, he's gone," it was her first thought. Then she trembled as she thought about the other, larger meaning of "he's gone." As in forever? The breathing lessons he had to lower his stress level were working by the time he made it to his driveway. In situations like this, Brad's therapist told him to go to your happy place. He had remembered this earlier in the day, and he thought the time might come to this. He was going to the fortress, that was his happy place. Inside his house, he loaded several changes of clothes, laptop, and his basket full of medicine and got back into his car. The fortress is in a new light industrial district on the east side of Interstate 75, away from any potential hurricane storm surge. It had been advertised as the Executive Man Caves. The building has an intimidating fence all around and a heavy-duty electronic entrance system. The long single-story windowless concrete buildings each had roll-up garage doors and steel-plated doors for the 6 individual units. Brad used his remote to open the roll-up door to drive into the big room. Brad's room was 1,500 square feet and had a concrete floor, small bedroom, bathroom with shower, and a kitchen. There was a large area of sofas, chairs, and tables, all centered on a 72-inch television mounted on the wall. Pennants, posters, and flags for University of Florida Gators and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers decorated the concrete wall. The posters of nude women on the back side of football posters were changed depending on who was in attendance. The center of his attention in this modern man cave was a 1999 Mercedes SL 500 convertible. It was a gleaming silver R129 two-seat roadster. His baby was covered and sitting nose to nose with the Lexus he had just used to escape from Molly. Oh yeah, he thought he might look at the numerous messages that made his cell phone look and sound like a bag of angry bees the last half hour. For the first time in 2 days, he smiled at the thought of Molly. Their time together had been good, but time changes. He was an engineer by training, education, and aptitude. There was a whiteboard on the wall for tracking wagers, bets, and scores on sporting events, and he thought it would come to good use. He cleaned the whiteboard of past scores of games played prior to his heart attack. It seemed like a decade ago he was a vibrant man with a faithful wife, but it's only been 3 days. Now he was naming the whiteboard Molly numbers. There were 4 columns with titles of I'm sorry, I love you, please forgive me, I'll do whatever it takes, and a blah blah blah. The final column was a how many no. He chuckled as many phrases from the cheater's book of excuses showed up in Molly's phone calls and texts. He thought the more people cheat, the more it all sounds the same. He didn't remember how many of these phrases were used since he first found out about her cheating. So he started the count with this evening's fiasco. I'm sorry, it was 9, I love you, it was 15, please forgive me, gate, whatever it takes, 12, a blah blah blah, 1. The a how many no. A column was an increasing number starting with 2, Eric and Molly. Next, 3 children and their spouses made the number 7. 3 of Carrie's friends and the hospital nurses created 13. Finally, the 3 couples from this night rang the total up to 19 that he knew of. How many more are there? He was glad that Molly was so discreet in her ducking the world's greatest lover. Yeah, right. Pandora, Pure Frank Sinatra. This was the music he wanted to hear as he put away his clothes and took his evening meds. A strong man, doing things his way, living a full life even though he had been in several painful relationships. He came out on top, and that is who he will now pattern his life. The next morning, he awoke restful and calm. Calm wouldn't be a word to describe his cell phone though. Good thing the whiteboard makes it easy to erase and replace the new numbers. As he was enjoying his morning coffee, there was a knock on his door. He thought, how the hell did she get past the gate? As he looked through the peephole, all he saw was a policeman's hat. He opened the door to find a young policeman and a woman police lieutenant. "Are you Brad Carson?" "Yes, ma'am, I am." "May we come in, Mr. Carson?" Brad pulled the door fully open and invited the officers in. It was hard to notice any bodily features of the woman officer other than she was blonde, tall, and without makeup. Her face was attractive. The officers strolled in and gave the man a quick once-over look. "I'm Lieutenant Pauls and this is Officer Sullivan. Last night your wife called the police station and wanted to have a silver alert posted for you. Her thought was you had another heart attack while driving and couldn't come home. We don't post one of those, amber alert or silver alerts, without doing some investigation. After questioning her, we thought you might be here. Now then, Mr. Carson, how are you feeling? Do you need any medical assistance?" Brad chuckled and said, "I'm suffering heartbreak, not a heart attack. My wife was having an affair while I was recuperating from a heart attack 4 months ago. I needed to get out of the house and reduce my stress. Thank you for checking on me, though." Lieutenant Pauls replied, "No problem, just doing our job." As she turned to leave, she said, "Oh my gosh. Is that a Roadster? I just love that car. What year is it? In 1999 with only 92,000 miles on it. It's beautiful. The car isn't even half broken yet. Can I sit in it?" Brad got to notice her graceful athleticism by the way she slid into the car. Her eyes were sparkling and her smile revealed her happiness as she gripped the wheel. After running her hand over the dash, she sighed and got out of the Mercedes. "Thank you for the treat of touching your car. It was fun." As she stepped directly in front of him, she handed him her card and said, "Call me if you need anything, and I'm glad you were not in distress." From the way she acted, Brad knew he was going to need that card very soon. He texted Molly, "You didn't tell me what you were doing for 4 months. Why should I tell you what I am doing for one night?" He made an appointment with his attorney for mid-morning, giving him time to do corrective measures at the bank and investment companies. After that, Brad was calm and measured as he told his tale of woe to his attorney Joe Smith. Joe and Brad had been friends and golf partners for years. After exposing his open wounds, Brad asked, "Is getting a divorce as bad on my financials as it is on my heart?" "It's a good thing you've had excellent legal advice over the last 15 years. He said with a smirk. "Unbeknownst to us at the time, what we did earlier is going to protect you, my friend. Remember that after the bad car wreck you were in, we put all your assets, except your house, in a trust? It scared all of us that if something happened to you, the sole shareholder, the company would suffer at the hands of the tax man. I even had Molly sign an affidavit assigning any interests in your company to the trust. Now the same goes for a divorce. Of course we need to make some changes to the trust. You'll still be the trustee, but we'll change the name of the beneficiary from Molly to you. We won't mention her in the trust. Son Jonathan will be your co-trustee with powers only after your demise. Next, we will change your will to how you want the trust assets divided. As you said, it will be 1/3 to Jonathan, 1/3 to Matthew, and 1/3 to trust for the children of Carrie until they are 25 years old. Education expenses will be covered from age 18 onward. How do you want to handle Molly? Your house isn't in the trust and I don't know how you want that treated. You will, of course, probably need to pay some marital support to Molly for a few years. What are your thoughts?" Brad replied, "I've got the house taken care of. I did fund a self-directed IRA to the max every year for her retirement. How much do you think I will need to pay in marital support?" "I don't know, we'll just have to see what Molly and the judge think. Now then, we need to do some strategic planning. I suppose you are going to start closing and transferring checking, savings and credit cards today? Also, we need to get the amended trust and will documents typed up and signed prior to your filing for divorce. We need to do these things in the right order to grease the path to settlement. It was very fortuitous for us to have done that trust several years ago. You're in a good place financially. I'm sorry your marriage didn't turn out as well." After taking care of closings and transfers, he stopped by the grocery store for needed supplies for his man cave, now home. Since it was a beautiful fall day, he raised the roll-up garage door to freshen the air inside. He was looking forward to this weekend. There are 6 buildings in the fortress and the tailgate parties there are always fun. Gas grills are rolled out in the driveways and water tanks are filled with ice and beer. Almost all the other man cave owners would have their school flags out on Saturday and NFL flags on Sunday. SEC rivalry games were the best times as fans were extremely loyal and in this setting very jovial. He knew he wouldn't be lonely as his life transitioned. He was looking forward to spending more time in his SL500, that was an eye-catcher for sure. With eyes rolling, he saw how many more texts and calls appeared on his cell phone. No matter the source, almost all correspondence topics were in the same 4 columns on his whiteboard, and he didn't see the need to answer. One text was different. It was from Carrie begging him to please call her. Yielding to Carrie's request, he called her, hoping the call would go to voicemail. No such luck, as Carrie answered a "Hello, Daddy." After greeting her, Carrie started in on him. "Dad, you have to call Mom. She is beside herself in grief, anger and regret. She's afraid someone will find you dead from another heart attack. Can you call her, please?" Brad thought, "Yeah, I guess I'll record this under the column of a blah blah blog. Okay, Carrie, what shall I say? Molly, I'm sorry you were worried about me. You weren't worried about me enough to stay out of that asshole's bed for 4 months. Why worry now when I am getting better? Is that what you want me to say, Carrie? Come on, Dad, she made a mistake. Can you forgive her and get back together? So she had some fun with another guy? You're a big enough man to shrug that off. The chances I shrug off a passionate moment are very slim. However, she screwed this guy over 40 times at his office or house. That is not an in the moment event. She drove an hour to get to his place so he could duck her. That's premeditated. That shows total disrespect and lack of any concern for me. Why'd you lie to your brothers and start this entire cuckolding fiasco? Why would you do such a disrespectful thing to your father? I'm so disappointed in you. You've really stabbed me in the back at the worst time in my life. My doctor tells me not to become stressed, and just talking to you puts me way over the red line." Click was the last thing she heard from her father. She wondered, last thing for now or forever? Now she started to cry. Pandora, pure frank shinatora. Brad spent the next couple of hours cleaning and dusting his SL500. While his man cave was closed up tight, the car still got dusty. Besides, it gave him something to do and something pleasant to think about. Saturday was just what Brad needed to decompress. He called a couple of his buddies to come to his unit at the Fortress for the Gator football game, steaks on his grill and beer in the ice tank. Of course, all 5 guys showed up. Brad was buying after all. Other unit owners stopped by to talk to Brad and or his buddies, as this was a very social event. Many of them knew about his heart attack and were glad to see him out and about. After 6 hours of talking, laughing and shouting, Brad was wiped out. His buddies were headed out to dinner, but Brad begged off, laid down by himself on the couch for the post-game show and fell asleep. 3 hours later he got up and went to bed. Brad didn't invite anyone to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers football game on Sunday. It was his day to walk to the other units and enjoy their hospitality. Just like Saturday, he had to watch what he ate or drank, rather watch what he couldn't eat or drink. Still, it was an enjoyable day. It appeared to him that his social life won't suffer too bad with the dismissal of his wife. At the end of the day, he was surprised that he didn't miss Molly at all. When she was at his unit for a game, she was also worried about the food, drinks, what she was wearing, who she was talking to, and where's Brad. She would suck the fun out of a pleasant afternoon of camaraderie and good times. Monday was a big day as he met with Joe Smith to finalize the legal documents for a divorce. It was a sad time for him because he couldn't get over the way he was cuckolded by the woman he had loved for so long. It was time to call it quits. Instead of answering any of the 100 texts, emails, or phone calls from Molly, Brad texted her saying, "Can we meet at the house Tuesday at 1 p.m.? Brad almost immediately Molly responded, "Of course, I've missed you so much. It will be great to see you again. Can you arrive at noon so we can have lunch?" "Sorry, I can't make it then. If you change your mind, Brad, you can stop by our house anytime that day." Even though Brad's text was cryptic, Molly hoped that this would be the start of their reconciliation. She wondered what dress to wear, not slutty or provocative, but alluring, welcoming him to her and their marital bed. Not for sex at this time. But for the intimacy of being together, getting Brad back into their home would take a lot of negotiation and compromise. She thought that both of them needed to compromise and respect each other's feelings. She knew that however he had acted the past week or so, Brad still loved her and wanted her to remain as his wife. At 1:01 p.m. on Tuesday, Brad rang the doorbell at their house. It was quickly opened by Molly, who had been standing inside the door since 12:45. Molly tried to hug her husband, but he diplomatically sidestepped her on his way to the family room. She happily placed a letter from the health department stating that she didn't have any sexually transmitted diseases on the table for Brad's review. "I know it's a small consolation to you, but I wanted you to know I am clean." Her comment was met with a shrug of his shoulders and a dull look in his eyes, as if to say, "So what?" Molly started the difficult conversation with questions about Brad's health. She was surprised when he told her about the tailgate parties he had attended over the weekend. "I hope you didn't overexert yourself, Brad. You have to remember to be careful of your heart." Brad thought I had a heart attack, then she broke my heart. Now she says be careful of my heart. What a hypocrite. After they talked about their kids and new grandkids' activities, Molly said, "Carrie has been a mess since you talked to her. She was only looking out for both of us because she loves us both. She thought my taking that therapy was appropriate." Well, her okay was way beyond what I thought was acceptable. In addition to her disgusting advice about ducking some asshole, both the boys thought your adulterous adventure was absolutely the wrong thing to do. Wrong in so many ways. I wonder how many other people now consider me the town-cluckolded wimp? What stories are being told at the bars? Filthy gossip at my expense spread by my daughter. I can't believe she would do that to me. I'm really sorry you found out about this and how the story got spread. We tried very hard to be discreet so no one would know or even think we were together. Brad snarled, "So I take it that if I hadn't found out about your cheating from the phone call, you would still be getting stuck by that asshole?" "I don't know, Brad. I hadn't decided yet. My heart was with you at all times, Brad. But my kitty was geared for sex and I needed it badly. I was going crazy and it was something my body needed. You weren't there, so I helped myself to some release. I knew you wouldn't approve, but I had to make a decision based on my needs as opposed to your opinion. My body, my decision. I'm really sorry you are angry, but that's the decision I made, hoping you would never find out. I was doing it for both our sex lives, yours and mine. I wanted to be ready when you would come to bed and order me to spread em. I wanted to be prepared for your deck. It's the deck that I prefer to have to thrill me. Always has been, always will be. To me, Eric's deck is no different than my vibrator. You finding out about this has created a stressful situation between us. I'm glad we were discreet and I didn't want you to get embarrassed publicly. That was never my intent. Your view of discretion and mine are different. By my count, today there are 19 people that know the whole story. You'd think you'd put it on the 6 p.m. news. How can that be? That can't be right." Staring at Molly, he recounted everyone that was on his whiteboard tally. Her face grew dark as she looked at the floor. This wasn't going to help her bargaining position. "I'm sorry, Brad, so sorry. Sorry for so many things. I'm sure you are. By my count, that is 57 times since I left the house that you have said or texted that to me. Where's that gotten us? I guess I've said that a lot because I truly am sore. I'll try not to say that word so often. Molly, you've also said you'd do anything to get us back together 46 times. So, tell me your plan on getting us back together." "My main goal, Brad, is to grow old with you being the only and main man in my life. You're a wonderful man, great father, and I want us to enjoy our grandchildren together. Knowing you like I do, you've researched what our options are. I've tried to put together several options for your approval. The option you want to hear is my kicking Eric in the nuts and never seeing him again. Under normal circumstances, that is the best option for a reconciliation. I'm willing to give you that promise, but I don't realistically feel I can remain faithful to you while you are incapacitated. That's hard for me to say to you, but I want to be honest with you. Once you're cleared for sex, I can guarantee you, I'll be faithful to you. Eric and all other men are no longer attractive to me. As I have told you, Eric is a temporary fill-in for the best lover in my life. Your treatment of me in the bedroom has made a nymphomaniac out of me. I just love having sex with you, but you are temporarily out of commission. I have every reason to think you'll be ready to thrill me to the moon in just a few months. In the meantime, I propose a phase out of Eric. I need to have sex twice a week. That's 2 hours out of the 168 hours in a week, or 1.1% of a week. That's not much in the grand scheme of things. The other 98.9% of the week I am being your loving and grateful wife. You'll never even know that I've had sex with Eric, just like you didn't know I was having sex with him over the past 4 months. You got along fine then, didn't you? See, that's not so difficult. As your penis is resurrected and fully functional, the dynamics change. When you can have sex once a week, I take a day away from Eric. When we can make love twice a week, there is no need for Eric to be around. You'd go back to being my main and only man. My last and least favorite option is for us to get a divorce. Least favorite because I'll no longer be able to have you make spectacular love to me. I'll really miss you and how you treat me as a wife and lover. The other downside is the financial aspects of a divorce. You've worked your ass off and sacrificed so much for me and the kids, it'd be a shame to have me take half of your company away from you. I'd have to do that to maintain my lifestyle. I'd get to keep my dream home and you'd have to leave. Even though I'd have the house, you have the option of stopping by and making love to me whenever you like. Plus, I'm sure you'd have to pay some form of marital support each month. I'm sure the lawyers would work that out. The end premise of each option is that I love you and want to stay with you. I feel we can work this out with both of us giving a little to make the other happy. Brad, I'm sure you'll want to make some modifications and I'm willing to change to make our marriage work. You can think this over and we can talk about it now. We can take our time because this is important to both of us. As soon as she had said the last words, Brad replied, "So this is what constitutes an I'll do anything to make our marriage work? It appears to me that you'll just keep screwing that mother ducker until you decide to quit." Forcefully, Molly said, I absolutely hate that MF word. Rude, crude and beneath you to talk like that. Almost shouting, he is a mother ducker, he ducked the mother of my children. That makes him a mother ducker. So shut the duck up with your moral indignity about my language, you hypocrite. How can you judge me about the words coming out of my mouth as we discuss the ramifications of that asshole's clock coming in your mouth? Molly blanched at his heated comments. He was right and she knew it, but she couldn't acknowledge that to him. I can tell that you have been receiving some legal advice. Since I reviewed this with Joe, who we have had worked with for years, you had to go elsewhere. Yes, Eric's brother is a lawyer and he gave advice on how divorces are usually settled. He was most helpful. Doesn't that take the cake? You duck for free physical therapy and now you duck for legal work? You really are becoming a hooer. Did the sleazebag lawyer hold the camera while you two ducked so you could remember your tender moments after I get my virility back? Don't talk like that, Brad. I'm trying to put us back together. Please, let's calmly try to fix this. Just for conversation, can you tell me what you were thinking about our reconciliation? Not any of this crap you are thinking about subjecting me to. I don't know how much clock sucking you did to come up with this legal opinion, but I think he got the better of the deal. Okay, Molly, I'm afraid you need a history lesson. Remember 3 years ago when I was in that car crash? Right after that, Joe recommended that we put all my assets, except the house, in a trust. I was the trustee and you were listed as the beneficiary. Well, that has been changed. I am now both the trustee and the beneficiary. You are not listed anywhere in the trust. It's very fitting as I have lost all trust in you. I now totally control the trust and it's impregnable from your position. I also redid my will to delineate how I want the trust dispersed. 1/3 to each Jonathan and Matthew. Carrie's children get 1/3 at age 25, with Jonathan being executor. Since I couldn't recognize the slut that you have become, you are no longer recognized in my will. The blood ran out of her face and her hands became clammy. She was speechless. Let's talk about your dream house. A house I didn't need or want, but you sure did. 2 years ago, you were hassling me about you buying a Lamborghini convertible. You made a big push for that, including withholding segs from me as a punishment. Remember? I sure as hell didn't want to buy you a very expensive Lamborghini for any reason, let alone one just to show off to your friends. Your dream house was paid in full, so I arranged to refinance the house. You and I, signed a mortgage for $900,000 on a $1,200,000 house. You took your $450,000, bought a Lamborghini, artwork for the house, and spent a month in Tuscany with your friends. Which brings about a new question. It appears you couldn't wait 2 weeks after my heart attack to start ducking somebody else. So, the new question is, how many Italians did you duck while you were in Tuscany? This slapped Molly directly in the chops. She couldn't even grunt a reply. She just hung her head. We had to trade off the Lamborghini because you had no clue on how to drive that high-energy car. Fender benders on a Lamborghini are way more expensive than on the Lexus I drive. After a combination of constant expensive car repair, higher insurance rates, and speeding tickets, I convinced you to trade that in for a Mercedes sedan at a loss of over $100,000. You still have the artwork in the house. That's yours. I don't want any of it. You never did tell me what a villa in Tuscany costs for a month. Anyway, your share of the house refinance is now in your driveway and on the walls, but you still owe the $450,000. I took my $450,000 to buy my unit at the Fortress and invested the balance, which, as of today, has almost doubled in value. That also isn't available for your attorney to grab. You can have the house and get to stay in it as long as you make the payments. Good luck with that. Now, if you want to own all of the house instead of only half, I'll give you my half if you sign these documents within the week. Of course, you will then need to pay my $450,000 in mortgage payments. There won't be any marital support or alimony for you. I'm disabled, unable to work, and don't have a clear doctor's report as to when I can return to work. My disability insurance policy is the only income one have. Too bad, dear. Income-wise, I'm now poorer than I was when I married you. However great the screwing you got from that mother ducker was, I'm sure this one will be remembered longer. I'll leave your house now, Molly. The paperwork for a divorce will follow shortly. Look it over, get a real attorney, pay with cash, not your mouth, kitty or ass. Just remember, the more you use that kitty with younger men, the less valuable it becomes to them or other sleazeballs. Brad left the envelope of divorce documents, walked briskly to the door, then turned, saying, I had a heart attack that nearly killed me. The pain and trauma were horrible, but I'm getting better every day. That was nothing compared to your breaking my heart. Something I will never recover from, but I am damn sure going to try. As he walked to his car, he thought what a difference a week makes. It seems like it was years ago, but it only took 8 days to totally upend my entire family. Court-ordered mediation was Molly's last hope for reconciliation. Brad used the sessions to remove the hate in his heart and calm his soul. He didn't want to have another heart attack. There was too much to do with the best part of his life coming up. He had a very hard time wanting to see Molly ever again. Brad and Carrie never fully repaired their relationship. Brad left his will in place and didn't change any beneficiaries. Epilogue. Molly's lame attorney tried to blast through the trust, but he was woefully unknowledgeable about complicated asset protection methods. She contacted another well-known firm, and they told her what Brad had offered was probably as best as she could expect. The fact that he made all these legal moves years before the divorce was proof that he was acting in good faith at the time. Molly took Brad up on his offer for his half of the house value and debt, then quickly sold the house. She has a small apartment in a safe neighborhood. Brad used a moving team to remove his items from the house, with most of the items going into storage or the Fortress. He thought he would wait until after the divorce to find an apartment or smaller house. He started going into the office for an hour or two a day, but he declined any wages. The investments that he had in his name only provided him the cash he needed, but that didn't count as income. While there, Laura Miller, his human resources director, was called to his office. As they were cleaning out his belongings from his former house, he found an interesting file folder. In it, he found a monthly report from the company's health insurance provider. Plus, the booklet Segs and the physical therapist was in the folder. This report displayed that Eric Adams had sent in a health insurance payment request to their company health insurance company for a $100 a day treatment on Molly for every workday of the week for 5 months. That's $2,000 per month his company was paying Eric to duck his wife. Brad had learned to modify his behavior the past few months. This time, instead of screaming, out came a diabolical laugh. At most, Molly only was there 8 days a month. It was time to toast Eric's balls. Laura was to gather and review all the medical billings on he and Molly for the past 5 months. Eric must have figured that the medical bills from Brad's heart attack would swamp the medical insurance reporting so much that his $100 per duck billing would go unnoticed. Laura was appalled at the obvious medical insurance fraud that Eric had inflicted on their company. Brad instructed her to have the health insurance company's representative scan this over. The representative was really pissed off after reviewing their documentation. She said their protocol was to first contact Eric Adams and ask him to explain and prove his billings were accurate. If proven wrong, he was to pay them back the $10,000 for 5 months of treatments. If they don't receive payment, they will sue. Either way, he'll be banned from health insurance participation by all the reputable companies. Brad had his attorney Joe Smith contact the Florida Board of Medicine and ask them to review the booklet Segs and the Therapist in relation to Eric Adams having sex over 40 times with Molly Carson. After further review and interviews with both Eric and Molly, his license to practice physical therapy in the state of Florida was revoked. Molly was devastated by how she was treated, as she was required to tell in detail what Eric did on each of those treatments. She thought the men on the board were leering at her while the women looked at her with disgust. Brad pestered Joe to have the local district attorney file fraud charges on Eric. As a favor to Joe, the district attorney filed the charges but never pursued prosecution because the $10,000 was a small amount in the criminal world. However, anyone doing a search on Eric Adams will see the pending fraud charges. Brad hired a search company to review applications in other states in case Eric wanted to practice physical therapy there. Within days of submitting his application, Joe Smith was informing the new state of Eric's fraudulent and disgraceful activities. Since Brad was classified as disabled with little income, Molly had to return to the working world. She hadn't kept up her continuing education hours, so her nursing license was suspended. Her new career was as a nurse's aide in a local retirement facility. A far cry from the country club life she had been living. Her work schedule and reduced income didn't allow her to join her former BFFs at the country club's swimming pool for cosmopolitans in the afternoon. Her divorced friends were so devastated to hear about her divorce that they started inviting her poor lonely soon-to-be ex-husband over for drinks and dinner. Their sons had almost no contact with her. Carrie and Molly blamed the other for alienating Brad and the boys. Both women were outraged about the very small sliver of assets they received from Brad as the divorce concluded. Brad laughed at Carrie's threat to withhold grandkid contact from him. After an embarrassing interview by the Board of Medicine about screwing Eric, she dropped all contact with him. Neither Brad nor the kids know if she is dating anyone, but that's hard to do when you work the night shift. Brad asked Joe if he could persuade the district attorney to file charges on Molly for prostitution. After all, she received a $100 treatment in exchange for sex. Goods and/or services in return for sex is the definition of prostitution, but Joe doubted it would stick. Brad didn't care. At least the police came to her apartment to investigate the humiliating charges. After the divorce was finalized, Brad also was the target of a police investigation. After a Sunday afternoon ride in his SL 500 with Lieutenant Pauls, now known as Shelley, the investigation started. It wasn't unusual for Brad to be pushed spread eagle against the wall in his man cave as Shelley did a complete pat-down for anything dangerous. No body cavity search, but strip searches were common. There were times that Brad found himself handcuffed to his bed with the nude police officer rubbing her kitty on his face, saying, "Come on, open up." Brad is back to full enjoyment of life. Numerous friends and acquaintances are always hooking him up with their sisters, neighbors, friends, and co-workers. For over 30 years he'd thought that Molly was the one and only woman for him. He found out that was not the case. He was enjoying the task of interviewing for a new one and only woman for him.